Right now, you believe that you exist. But do you remember creating yourself? You assume you were born, that your past led you here, that your identity was formed over time. But what if none of that is true? What if you were created, but you have no memory of it? Think about it. Every object, every structure, every system has a point of origin. A house is built, a book is written, a painting is painted. But what about you? Where did the you that is thinking these thoughts begin? You assume your consciousness is a product of your brain, that your mind simply emerged from biology. But if something was created, shouldn't it be aware of the moment it came into existence? Now take it further. Try to remember the exact instant when you first became aware of yourself. Not just a childhood memory, but the first moment of you. Can you? Or is your past just a blur, a collection of memories that stretch backward with no clear starting point? If you cannot remember coming into existence, then how do you know you weren't created just now? With every memory, every experience, every piece of knowledge implanted in your mind. What if everything you believe about your past is just a fabricated backstory designed to make you think you have always been here? Now take it even further. Imagine waking up with no memories, nothing to define you, no past to shape you. Would you still be you? Or are you nothing more than a collection of memories, a self assembled from information, a story you tell yourself to justify your own existence? If that is true, then who or what wrote the story? Now consider this. If you were created, but you do not remember it, then what does that say about reality? Could it be that everything, the world, time, even your own mind, was constructed just moments ago? And if that is true, then how do you know that your past even happened at all? Now take it even further. If you were created but have no memory of it, then what happens when the process happens again? What if at any moment your consciousness could be reset, your entire self erased, replaced by a new version of you that believes it has always been here? If your past can be rewritten, if your identity can be replaced, then here is the final, most unsettling question. Are you real, or are you just a mind that was created in this very moment, with no way of knowing what came before? Close your eyes for a moment and try to remember your last dream. Maybe it was vivid, strange, filled with people, places, and emotions. Maybe in that dream, you were completely certain that it was real, that you were living in it, making choices, experiencing time as if it were reality. But then you woke up. The self that existed inside that dream, where did it go? What happened to that version of you, the one who lived, felt, and thought inside a world that no longer exists? You assume that the dream self was just an illusion, something your brain generated while you were unconscious. But right now, as you exist in this moment, how do you know that this version of you is not just another illusion, another dream self, waiting to be forgotten? Imagine this. Every night, you enter a dream world and live an entire life. You form relationships, experience joy and pain, make decisions. In that world, you believe you are real, but then you wake up, and that self vanishes. Its memories fading, its existence dissolving as if it never was. But what if that self was just as real as the one you are experiencing now? Now take it further. What if this reality, the one you are in now, is no different from a dream? You assume you are awake, that this is solid, that the past you remember actually happened. But what if the self you believe in right now is just another temporary construct, one that will soon dissolve? the way your dream self did? Imagine that. Every time you sleep, you do not just rest. You cease to exist. The self that was awake never returns. When you wake up, a new version of you takes its place. One that only believes it is continuing the existence of the previous version. But that past self, that identity, that awareness, gone, forgotten, erased. But now, consider this. If this self, the one experiencing reality right now, could disappear as easily as your dream self, then how do you know it hasn't happened before? What if last night you went to sleep and never truly woke up? What if the version of you from yesterday is already lost, and the self reading these words now is merely its replacement, a copy, inheriting memories from something that no longer exists? If the dream self vanishes without realizing it, then how do you know that you will not vanish the same way? And if every day a new version of you wakes up, taking the place of the one that existed before, then what happened to all of your past selves? Where did they go? You assume that because you remember being you, you must be the same person. But memory is not proof of continuity. It is just information, stored data in a system that can be altered, rewritten, or erased. And if you are nothing more than a collection of memories tied to a temporary awareness, then here is the final, most unsettling question. How many times have you already disappeared? And when you sleep tonight, will you ever wake up again? Or will a new self take your place, believing, just as you do now, that it has always been here? You assume that there is a way out, that no matter how complex reality seems, no matter how deep the illusion goes, there must always be an escape, a path leading to truth, to freedom, to something beyond the endless loops of perception. You believe that if only you could understand enough, see clearly enough, you would find the exit. But what if there is no exit? What if every path you take, every question you ask, every answer you uncover only leads you deeper into the illusion, making the escape more impossible with every step? You believe you are moving towards something, that your thoughts are taking you somewhere, that reality is leading to an ultimate destination. But what if you are not moving forward at all? What if every time you think you are getting closer to an answer, you are only cycling back to where you started, trapped inside an inescapable system, forever searching for a door that does not exist? Now take it further. You have been in a dream, before, inside a world that felt real, where the laws of reality seemed to hold, where you moved, thought, and existed, and yet it was an illusion. You did not realize it was a dream until you woke up. But in that moment before waking, did you ever feel trapped? Did you ever search for a way out, only to find that every door, every escape led you back inside? What if waking life is no different? What if you are already inside something that you cannot leave, something designed to make you believe there is an exit, when in reality, every attempt at escape only reinforces the illusion? If you were trapped inside a system, would you be able to recognize it? Or would every thought about escape be nothing more than a programmed response, another loop within the trap? Now take it even further. Have you ever felt like reality itself was playing with you? That the more you search for meaning, the more contradictions you find? That the deeper you dig, the more the answers slip away, becoming distorted, shifting, evading clarity? What if this is not just confusion, but design? What if reality is structured to ensure that no one ever finds the exit, that no one ever reaches the truth? Imagine a maze that changes every time you turn a corner, a puzzle that rearranges itself the moment you get close to solving it, No matter how carefully you move, no matter how much progress you think you are making, the structure itself shifts to keep you inside. You believe you are getting closer to something real, but the moment you grasp it, the rules change, forcing you to start again. Now ask yourself, what if the more you seek an exit, the more lost you become? What if this entire system, this reality, this experience, this very moment, is designed to keep you searching forever, never allowing you to reach the outside? And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. Who built the maze? And if no one did, if the maze has no creator, no architect, then does that mean it has always existed, trapping every consciousness that enters it, cycling endlessly, with no beginning, no end, and no way out? Look around you. The walls, the sky, the objects in your room. You assume they are solid, constant, real. You believe that even when you close your eyes, even when you turn away, the universe remains exactly as it is, existing independently of your awareness. But how do you know? What if the universe only exists when you are looking at it? What if, the moment you look away, it vanishes, ceasing to exist until your mind recreates it again? Now take it further. Everything you perceive comes to you through your senses. You see, hear, touch, taste, and smell the world, and your brain constructs a reality from these inputs. But you have never experienced the world directly. You have only ever experienced your mind's interpretation of it. Now, imagine that nothing outside of your perception is real. Right now, you assume there is a world outside your field of vision. You assume the people you know still exist, even when you are not with them. You assume that the places you have left still remain exactly as they were. But what if they don't? What if the universe is like a stage, one that only constructs itself when you are there to observe it? Think of a video game. When you walk through a digital world, the environment renders in real time. The objects, the landscapes, the details are only loaded when you approach them, while everything outside your immediate surroundings does not exist until you get there. What if reality works the same way? What if the universe is not a stable, permanent structure, but something that builds itself around you, moment by moment, disappearing as soon as you leave? Now take it even further. If the universe vanishes when you are not observing it, then what happens when you sleep? You assume that time passes while you are unconscious, that the world keeps moving, that events unfold, that people continue their lives. But how do you know? You have no direct experience of the time when you are asleep. You simply wake up and assume that time has passed. What if, the moment you lose awareness, the universe ceases to exist, only to be reloaded the moment you wake up? Now, take it even further. If the universe requires you to observe it, then was it ever there before you were born? You believe in history, in a past that existed before you. But everything you know about the past is just information inside your mind, memories, books, stories passed down. How do you know that any of it actually happened? If the universe disappears when you do not observe it, then here is the final, most unsettling question. What happens when you die? Does the universe continue without you, or does it simply vanish because you were the only thing holding it together? Stand in front of a mirror and look into your own eyes. There you are, your reflection, a perfect duplicate of your face, staring back at you. You recognize yourself instantly. But now, ask yourself, which one is real? You assume that you are The original and the image in the mirror is merely a reflection. But how do you know? The moment you move, it moves. The moment you blink, it blinks. Every action is perfectly mirrored, perfectly synchronized. But what if the version in the mirror is thinking the exact same thing? What if, from its perspective, you are the reflection, just an image that mimics every move it makes? Now take this further. Your mind is a mirror too. Every thought you have is a reflection of something. Memories, experiences, interpretations of the world around you. But if everything you think is just a reflection of something else, then where is the original? Can you have an original thought? Or is everything just a reaction? A copy of something that came before it? Now, imagine a room made entirely of mirrors. Step inside, and your reflection multiplies infinitely, stretching in all directions. You see yourself repeated 1,000 times over, each copy identical to the last. But here's the unsettling part. Which one is the real you? They all appear the same. They all move when you move. But if one of them were the real you, how would you ever know? Now take it even further. What if your mind itself is trapped in a mirror room? What if every thought you have is simply a reflection of another reflection, bouncing endlessly in your head with no original source? You assume you are a single consciousness, but what if you are actually two minds reflecting back on each other? What if the moment you recognize yourself, a second hidden version of you is recognizing you, but neither of you realizes the other is just a mirror? Think of how you think. You often talk to yourself, don't you? That internal voice inside your head. Who is it talking to? If you are the one thinking, then why do you need a separate voice inside your mind narrating your experience? Is it possible that your thoughts are not yours, but echoes of something else? Endless reflections in a mirror you cannot escape. Now, take this further. If every version of you in the mirror is identical, then what if the you reading these words is just another copy? What if somewhere there is an original version of you, the real you, but the consciousness inside your head is nothing more than an artificial reflection, thinking it is real simply because it was created to believe it? If everything you experience is just a reflection, if your mind is only responding to what it sees, what it remembers, what it imagines, then how do you know that you truly exist? How do you know you are not just another image in the glass, trapped in an endless loop, waiting for something real to appear? And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. If you are just a reflection, then where is the real you? And what happens to the reflection when the mirror finally breaks? Right now, you assume that you are experiencing the world as it is, that what you see, hear, and feel is an accurate representation of reality. You believe that your senses deliver a true version of existence, that your thoughts and emotions arise freely, that your mind is open to the vastness of the universe. But what if that is an illusion? What if you are trapped inside your own perception, locked in, unable to ever experience what truly exists beyond your limited awareness? Now take it further. Everything you perceive is filtered through your senses. You do not experience the world directly. You only experience your brain's interpretation of the world. The colors you see are not actually out there in the world. They are simply wavelengths of light that your brain translates into colors inside your mind. The sounds you hear do not truly exist as sound until your brain constructs them from raw vibrations in the air. Your reality is not the actual world. It is just a simulation created by your own nervous system. Now take it even further. If everything you experience is filtered and translated, then how do you know there is not something beyond your senses, something real that you will never be able to perceive? Imagine being born blind and deaf. You would have no concept of sight or sound, no way of even imagining what those sensations are like. But the fact that you cannot experience them does not mean they do not exist. Now ask yourself, what if you are already missing an entire layer of reality, something beyond your ability to perceive, something that is there but which you will never be able to access? Now take it even further. Imagine being inside a locked room with no windows, no doors. Everything you know comes from inside that room. You assume that the world outside the room exists, but you can never reach it, never see it, never know what is really there. What if your mind is that room? What if your perception is not an open window to reality, but a prison, keeping you locked inside an artificial version of the world, a version that your mind has created, but that is not truly real? Now consider this. If you cannot escape your own perception, then how do you know whether the world you see is anything like the world that truly exists? What if your reality is not real at all, but just a projection, a simulation inside your mind, trapping you inside an experience that has nothing to do with what actually lies beyond your awareness? And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. If you are locked inside your own perception, how do you know that anything exists beyond your mind at all? What if there is no external world? What if there is only you, trapped in a reality you can never escape? You assume that events unfold in a logical sequence, that causes come first and effects follow. You believe that everything in reality moves forward in time, that actions lead to consequences, that the past determines the future. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if the effect happens first and the cause follows later? What if you are already experiencing the consequences of events that have not happened yet? Now take it further. Imagine dropping a glass. You expect it to shatter only after it hits the ground. But what if one day the glass shatters before it touches the floor? You see the fragments scatter, and only then does your hand open to release it. It sounds impossible, but if time is just a construct, if cause and effect are not bound by the rules you assume, then how can you be sure that events unfold in the order you believe they do? What if you have already made choices in the future, and what you think of as decisions are simply you discovering what you have already done? Now, take it even further. Have you ever had a strong gut feeling, an unexplainable certainty that something was about to happen, only to watch it unfold moments later? You assume that it was just intuition, a trick of the mind. But what if it was something else? A future event sending ripples back through time, influencing your mind before it even occurs? Now consider déjà vu, the eerie feeling that you have already lived a moment before. You assume that déjà vu is a glitch in memory, that it is just your brain misfiring. But what if it is not a mistake, but evidence that you have already experienced this moment in the future? What if, right now, you are trapped in a loop, reliving events over and over? But your mind can only remember fragments, small echoes of a reality you have not yet reached. Now take it even further. If the future can influence the past, then how much of your life has already been written? What if every thought, every action, every event is just you following a timeline that has already been set in motion? One where the effects are appearing before you even understand the cause. If that is true, then are you truly making choices, or are you simply uncovering what has already happened? And if the effect comes before the cause, Then here is the final, most unsettling question. What if you are already living in the aftermath of something that has not yet occurred? And when that moment finally arrives, will you even realize that it was the cause? Or will you be too late? You have thoughts about your childhood, experiences that shaped you, a lifetime of moments stored somewhere in your mind. But what if there are memories inside you that you will never access? Memories that exist but remain forever hidden. You assume that everything you remember is everything you have experienced. But what if your mind is filled with shadow memories, fragments of lost time, entire portions of your past that have been erased from your conscious mind, yet still exist somewhere deep within you? Now take it further. Have you ever had a feeling, a familiarity that you could not explain? A strange moment when a place, a face, or an event feels known, as if you have been there before, even though you have no memory of it. What if that is not just a trick of the mind? What if you have been there before, just not as the version of yourself that you remember? Consider this. The brain does not store every detail of your experiences. It filters, selecting what is important and discarding what is unnecessary. But what happens to the discarded memories? Are they erased forever? Or are they simply buried, existing in the shadows, outside of your awareness? Now imagine that those hidden memories, those shadow memories, are still influencing you. What if your fears, your habits, your instincts are not random, but remnants of forgotten experiences, pieces of a past you can no longer access, yet which still shape your decisions, your emotions, your thoughts? Now take it even further. What if there are memories inside you that do not even belong to you? Imagine waking up with the memories of a different life, an entirely different past. Would you still be you? Or would your sense of self shift to match the new history? Now, consider this. If it is possible for memories to be hidden from you, then how much of your past has already been erased? What if entire days, weeks, years of your life have already been forgotten, but not completely lost? What if, deep inside you, there are entire versions of yourself that still exist, selves you do not remember, yet which remain stored somewhere in your mind, waiting for the right moment to resurface? And if that is true, then how do you know that the memories you have now are even real? What if your current memories are just a reconstruction, a narrative your mind has created to explain the present, while the true events of your past remain hidden in the shadows, waiting to change your perception of reality forever? Now, take it even further. If memories shape identity, then who were you before you lost the memories you no longer have? If parts of your past have already been erased, then how many different versions of you have existed before the one that remains now? And if every memory inside your mind could be altered, rewritten, or replaced, if your past could be rewritten without you noticing, then here is the final, most unsettling question. How do you know you are still the same person you were yesterday? Or has that version of you already disappeared, leaving nothing behind but a shadow? You assume that you are the same person you were yesterday, last week, last year. You believe that your identity is continuous, that your past and present are linked by an unbroken thread of selfhood. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if your sense of self is not preserved, but constantly overwritten, erasing the previous versions of you, replacing them with something new, leaving nothing behind? Right now, as you read this, you feel like a single, unified consciousness. But are you? Look back on your past. Do you feel like the same person you were 10 years ago? 5 years ago, even yesterday. Your thoughts, desires, beliefs, and even your memories have changed. And if everything about you has shifted over time, then what exactly has remained constant? If your memories define who you are, then what happens when they change? Imagine that your mind is like a computer. Every day, new information is written onto your consciousness, altering your perceptions, shaping your reality. But just like a file on a hard drive, old information is not stored forever. It is overwritten. The past versions of you do not continue existing. They are erased, replaced by an updated model that only believes it has always been here. Now take this further. If you are being rewritten constantly, then how do you know that the you who woke up this morning is the same you who went to sleep last night? What if your mind is restructured in your sleep, deleting old versions, replacing them with something new, so subtly that you never notice the transition? Every time you wake up, every time you learn something new, every time you forget an old memory, the you that existed before is overwritten, lost to time. The person who experienced your childhood no longer exists. The person who had certain dreams and fears 5 years ago is gone. In their place, you remain, believing that you have always been the same, unaware that countless previous versions of you have already been erased. And if that is true, then how many versions of you have already been lost? Now take it further. What if you could watch yourself being rewritten in real time? Imagine that every second, small pieces of your consciousness are being replaced, new information entering, old information dissolving. This would mean that the you who began reading this sentence is already gone, replaced by a slightly altered version of yourself. You assume that memory preserves your identity, but memory itself is unstable. It fades, distorts, and rewrites itself. Every time you recall a past event, your brain reconstructs it, changing details, removing information, filling in gaps with things that may never have happened. If memory is unreliable, then what does that mean for your past self? If the memory of who you once were can be rewritten, then was that self ever real to begin with? Now consider this. If a person's memories were completely altered, would they still be the same person? If their thoughts, beliefs, personality, and emotions were all changed, then what would remain of the original self? And if that is true, then what if you are already a rewritten version of someone else? What if, at some point in time, the original version of you was erased, and the person experiencing this moment is nothing more than a new consciousness that inherited memories from something that no longer exists? If you are constantly being rewritten, constantly being replaced, then here is the final, most unsettling question. Who was the original you, and how many times has that person already been erased? Close your eyes and focus on the awareness inside your mind, the part of you that observes your thoughts, feels emotions, and experiences the world. You assume this inner observer is constant, that it remains with you from moment to moment, an unbroken presence inside your consciousness. But what if that assumption is false? What if the observer, the thing you call I, is not stable, but something that is constantly vanishing and being replaced? Right now, as you experience these words, you feel a sense of self. But where was that self just a moment ago? Was it the same observer that existed 5 minutes ago, 5 years ago? Or is your awareness something that flickers in and out of existence, like a flame that keeps relighting itself, never truly the same as it was before? You assume continuity, that your experience is seamless. But what if every single moment of consciousness is disconnected, with your mind simply filling in the gaps to create the illusion of a continuous self. Imagine a film reel. When played, in motion it seems smooth, fluid, alive. But in reality, it is just a series of still frames, each moment frozen in time, each one distinct from the next. Your awareness may function the same way, not as an unbroken experience, but as an endless series of separate flashes of perception, one moment appearing, then disappearing, only for another to take its place. If that is true, then the you that exists in this moment is not the same you that existed a second ago. That version of you is already gone, and the next version of you, the one who will read the next sentence, has not yet appeared. But here's where it gets worse. If your awareness is constantly vanishing and restarting, then how do you know that the next version of you is truly you? Each time you blink, each time you sleep, each time you pause between thoughts, how do you know that the same consciousness returns? What if, in those empty spaces, the previous version of you ceases to exist and a new observer, one that simply inherits your memories, takes its place? Now take this even further. If the observer is disappearing and being replaced constantly, then where do the previous versions of you go? Do they dissolve into nothingness? Do they exist somewhere else, fragmented echoes of your past selves, unaware that they have already been left behind? Think about the last time you lost track of time. Maybe you were staring at a wall, daydreaming, lost in thought. When you snapped back to reality, it was as if time had skipped forward. But what if something else had happened? What if the observer you were before that moment is not the same one that returned? What if, in the gap, the previous version of you was permanently erased and a new consciousness stepped in to take its place? And if this is true, if the observer inside you is constantly vanishing, then what does that say about the self you believe in? You assume you are the same person you were yesterday, last year, since the moment you were born. But if every past version of you has already vanished, then what proof do you have that your existence is continuous? What if every time you close your eyes, the world reboots, and the observer that opens them is simply a fresh copy of a self that no longer exists? And if you have already disappeared countless times before, then here is the final, most unsettling question. How do you know this version of you won't vanish next? And when it does, when your current awareness fades away, how will the next observer ever know that you were once here? Or are you just another consciousness that was born in this instant, believing you have always been here, while the previous versions of you are already long gone? Try to predict your next thought before it appears. Try to decide, right now, what you will think next, before the thought arrives. You can't. Thoughts appear on their own, forming in your mind without permission. You assume that you are the one thinking, that you generate ideas, control your inner dialogue, shape your perception of reality. But what if that assumption is false? What if your thoughts do not come from you at all? Now take it further. You believe that thoughts have an origin, that they come from some hidden depth inside your mind. But where does a thought begin? Does it come from your brain, from your subconscious? Or does it simply create itself, forming from nothing, emerging in your awareness without a clear source? Consider this. If you are truly the one in control of your thoughts, then why can't you stop thinking? If you are the one generating your inner monologue, then why do thoughts appear that you never intended to have? How many times have you thought of something disturbing, something random, something completely unrelated to what you were doing, something that seemed to arrive in your mind without warning, without reason? Now, take it further. Imagine that thoughts do not come from you, but that instead they are self-generating loops. Ideas that create themselves, forming and sustaining their own existence, using your mind as nothing more than a space in which to appear. If thoughts arise on their own, if they come into being without your control, then what if your mind is nothing more than a passive observer, watching thoughts form, move, and disappear, without ever truly participating? Now consider this. If thoughts create themselves, then what is stopping them from changing your perception of reality? What if a thought, once formed, does not just appear, but rewrites your entire awareness, reshaping your sense of self, your memories, your emotions? What if every thought you have modifies you in some way, so that each time you think, you are not the same person you were before? And if thoughts create themselves, shaping your mind as they appear, then are you actually in control, or are you simply the byproduct of thoughts thinking themselves? An illusion created by an endless cycle of self-sustaining ideas, each one leaving its mark, each one building on the last, until a self emerges that believes it has always existed. Now, take it even further. If your thoughts are not truly yours, then where do they come from? Are they the result of external influences, things you've seen, things you've heard, or are they independent entities, forming in the darkness of your mind, moving through you, using your brain as a host before disappearing again? If a thought has no true origin, if it creates itself inside you, then does that mean that you are simply the space in which thoughts appear? Are you just the blank screen on which thoughts project themselves? An illusion generated by an endless sequence of self-creating ideas, each one shaping the next, each one constructing the illusion of a mind that does not actually exist. And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. Are you the one thinking, or are thoughts simply thinking themselves, using you as nothing more than a temporary home? And if they are, then when the thoughts disappear, what happens to you? Right now, you believe you remember your past. You assume that your thoughts belong to you, that your mind is a singular entity, reflecting reality as it is. You believe that your perception is unique, that your consciousness is an original awareness experiencing life from a single point of view. But what if that is an illusion? What if your mind is not a single entity, but a reflection of something else, an infinite hall of mirrors, where nothing is truly original, only endlessly repeated? Look into a mirror. What do you see? Yourself, staring back at you. But which one is real? The person standing in front of the glass, or the one trapped inside it? You assume that the reflection is not alive, that it only moves because you move. But what if the reflection assumes the same about you? What if, from its perspective, it is real and you are the imitation? Now take it further. Imagine standing between two mirrors, facing infinite versions of yourself, stretching into eternity. You see endless duplicates, each slightly fainter than the last, each one appearing to exist independently. But which one is the original? You assume that the real you is the one standing in the center, but if every reflection follows the same logic, then each one believes that it is the true self. What if your mind works the same way? What if your thoughts are not original, but mere reflections, echoes of something else, bouncing endlessly, each one believing it is the first? If every thought you have is built on previous thoughts, then where does the first thought come from? Or is there no original, just an endless sequence of ideas reflecting themselves, forever looping? Now take it further. Consider your memories. Every time you recall something, your mind is not retrieving the original event. It is retrieving the last time you remembered it. Like a mirror reflecting a mirror, your memories become distortions of distortions, shifting slightly each time until the original moment is lost entirely. If all your memories are reflections of reflections, then how much of your past is even real? Now take it even further. If your thoughts, your memories, your very self is built on layers of reflection, then how do you know where you end and where the reflections begin? What if the consciousness inside your mind is not actually yours, but something else, a reflection of a greater mind, bouncing endlessly, unaware that it is only an echo? If you have ever spoken to yourself inside your mind, if you have ever had an internal dialogue, then who exactly are you speaking to? If you are the one thinking, then why does another voice inside you respond? Is there truly only one you, or is your consciousness split, mirroring itself infinitely, each part believing it is the true self? Now consider this. If reality is a hall of mirrors, then what happens when you try to find the original? Every time you attempt to locate the real version of yourself, you find only another reflection, another layer of thought, another loop of awareness, another self reflecting itself, again and again, endlessly. If you cannot find the true version of yourself, then is there one at all? Or are you just another copy, trapped in an eternal mirror, repeating the same illusion forever? If your mind is an endless reflection, if every thought is a copy of another, then here is the final, most unsettling question. Who is the original? And if there is none, if there was never a first self, only infinite reflections, then does that mean you were never real to begin with? Right now, you are aware. You are reading these words, processing them, thinking about them. You assume that awareness is simple, that there is a clear you inside your mind, experiencing the world. But what if your awareness is contradictory, split between multiple versions of yourself, each existing simultaneously, each unaware of the others? You assume that consciousness flows in one direction, that your thoughts and perceptions come together into a single, unified experience. But what if your mind is actually a collection of conflicting perspectives, each competing for dominance, each believing that it is the true you? Consider this. Have you ever argued with yourself, felt torn between two choices, experienced a thought that contradicted another thought? If you were truly a single awareness, how could such contradictions exist? Now, take it further. What if, at this very moment, there is more than one version of you operating inside your consciousness? What if every thought you have is not truly yours, but the result of a silent war between multiple selves, each trying to take control? You assume you are in charge, that your choices are made by a singular mind. But if two thoughts can arise inside you at the same time, contradicting each other, then which thought belongs to the real you? Or is there no real you at all? Just a constant struggle between opposing forces, a battle for control happening inside your own mind, without you even realizing it. Now, take this further. Imagine your mind as a room full of mirrors, each one reflecting a different version of you. Some reflections agree, some contradict. Some are so different that they feel like strangers. Which one is truly you? And if all of them exist simultaneously, then are you ever just one consciousness? Or are you always shifting between multiple identities, unaware of the transition? Think about moments when you change your mind. 1 second, you are certain of something. The next second, you doubt it. But who is the one doing the doubting? Who is the one arguing against the thought you just had? Is it possible that your mind is not a single voice, but an entire collective? A gathering of conflicting identities, each believing it is the dominant one, each taking turns controlling the experience? And if that is true, then which version of you is reading this right now? What if, by the time you finish this sentence, another version of you has already taken over? Now take it even further. If awareness is not singular, if your consciousness is made of multiple selves, then which one is the real you? If different versions of you exist inside your mind, some stronger, some weaker, some silent, some dominant, then how do you know that you are always in control? What if the person who wakes up tomorrow is not truly the same version of you who went to sleep tonight? What if the you who believes they are continuous is simply the latest winner in the battle for control, unaware of all the previous versions that have already vanished? And if you are constantly being replaced, constantly contradicting yourself, constantly shifting from one version of awareness to another, then here is the final, most unsettling question. Which version of you will exist tomorrow? And will it still remember this version of you at all? Right now, you are aware of yourself. You are observing your own thoughts, watching your mind process these words. But who is observing the observer? You assume that your awareness is a single, unified experience, one mind looking out at the world. But if you can observe yourself thinking, doesn't that mean there must be another part of you that is watching? And if that is true, then who is watching the watcher? You may think that your mind is like a mirror, reflecting reality back to you. But what if your consciousness is not just a mirror, but two mirrors facing each other? An infinite tunnel of observation with no true origin. Now try to focus on your own awareness. Try to find the exact place where you, the observer, exist. You can observe your thoughts, but can you observe the part of you that is doing the observing? Try it. Every time you attempt to look inward, to catch yourself in the act of being aware, your awareness shifts just beyond reach, like a shadow that moves when you turn to look at it. If you cannot observe the observer, then who or what are you? Now, take this further. Imagine that consciousness is a hall of mirrors, each version of you reflecting back on another, infinitely looping, with no single you at the core. When you think, there is a voice inside your head that seems to narrate your experience. But who is listening to that voice? Is the voice you, or are you the one hearing it? And if you are the one hearing it, then who is hearing the part of you that is aware of it? Every time you try to locate your observer, you find only another layer of observation, an endless loop that never resolves, never lands on a true self. Now, take it even further. If the observer is infinitely looping, if your awareness is just an echo bouncing back on itself, then what if you are just a byproduct of that loop? What if you do not exist as a solid entity, but only as a self-referencing cycle, a thought that thinks about itself, believing it is real? Think of a camera pointed at a screen showing its own live feed. The image keeps repeating into infinity, but there is no true image, only endless layers of reflections. What if that is exactly what you are? What if the part of you that believes it is thinking, experiencing, choosing, is nothing more than a recursive illusion, an infinite loop where no true self ever exists? If there is no core, no single observer, only a series of reflections, then how do you know there is anything behind the illusion? How do you know that you exist at all? And if you are nothing more than an observation that observes itself, then here is the final, most unsettling question. What happens when the loop stops, and if it never started in the first place? Was there ever a you to begin with? Right now, as you read these words, thoughts are forming in your mind. You assume they are yours, that every idea, every belief, every sensation originates from within you. But how do you know that? What if your thoughts are not truly your own? What if your mind is not something you possess, but something you are merely borrowing? A temporary stream of awareness that does not belong to you. You believe that your mind is an independent entity, a private space where you process information and make decisions. But take a moment to consider how much of your thinking is truly original. The language you use, the ideas you entertain, the concepts you accept as reality, none of them were created by you. They were given to you, taught, absorbed, passed down through society, history, experience. Your thoughts are shaped by external forces, by the books you read, the conversations you have, the media you consume. You assume you are making choices, forming opinions, arriving at conclusions. But what if your mind is simply a receiver, tuning into signals that were never really yours to begin with? Now take this further. Imagine waking up one day with no memory, no past experiences, no prior knowledge. Would you still have the same thoughts? Would you still believe in the same things? Without the information you have accumulated, who or what would you be? Perhaps you are not a single stable mind at all. Perhaps your consciousness is simply a temporary collection of borrowed thoughts, assembling and dissolving like shifting clouds, never truly yours, never truly original. But what if it goes deeper than that? What if your thoughts are not just borrowed from the external world, but from other minds entirely? What if the thoughts passing through your head right now do not belong to you, but are echoes, fragments of other consciousnesses that have unknowingly leaked into your perception? Consider this. Have you ever had a thought that felt foreign? An idea that appeared in your mind seemingly out of nowhere? A feeling that did not seem to belong to you? What if these are not random thoughts but intrusions, remnants of other awarenesses bleeding into your own? And if that is true, then where do your thoughts go when they leave you? If you are constantly receiving thoughts, then you must also be transmitting them, sending them out into the void, to be picked up by another consciousness, just as you unknowingly pick up others. You assume that your thoughts are private, locked, inside your mind. But what if they are not? What if they are shared, drifting beyond you, dissolving into the collective consciousness of something greater, something you do not even realize you are a part of? Now, take it even further. If your thoughts are not your own, if they are borrowed, inherited, and passed along, then what does that say about you? Are you truly an independent mind, or are you simply a vessel carrying thoughts that do not belong to you, believing them to be yours? And if your mind is nothing more than a container for borrowed ideas, then what happens when those ideas fade? If every thought in your head was placed there by something else, if every piece of you is just something taken from somewhere else, then here is the final, most unsettling question. Without those thoughts, without those borrowed pieces, what is left of you? And if nothing remains, then were you ever really here at all? You believe that you exist. Right now, as you read these words, you feel present, aware, conscious. But can you prove it? You assume that reality is real because you experience it. You assume that you are real because you think, because you feel, because you remember. But how do you know that any of this is actually happening? That your existence is anything more than an assumption? Consider this. Everything you know about the world comes through your senses. You see, hear, touch, taste, and smell reality, and through those sensations, your mind builds an understanding of what exists. But your senses are not perfect. They can be fooled. Optical illusions distort what you see. Dreams feel real while you're inside them. Hallucinations can create vivid experiences that do not correspond to anything outside the mind. If your senses can be deceived, then how can you be sure that they have ever shown you something real? Now take it further. Your memories tell you that you have lived a life before this moment, but memories are unreliable. They can be altered, erased, rewritten. You assume that because you remember waking up this morning, that event must have happened. But how do you know that memory was not placed inside your mind just seconds ago? What if your entire past never happened? What if it was simply fabricated, inserted into your awareness to make you believe you have continuity? Now try to prove that you exist outside of your own perception. Everything you know about yourself, your name, your history, your emotions, is something that exists inside your own mind. But what if your mind is the only thing that exists? You assume that there is an external world beyond you, that people, places, and events exist outside your perception. But how do you know? You have never experienced anything outside of your own consciousness. Everything you see is something your brain interprets. Everything you hear is something processed by your mind. Everything you feel, everything you think, everything you assume is true only exists within your awareness. Now take it even further. If existence depends on being observed, then what happens when you stop observing? When you close your eyes, does the world remain? Or does it cease to exist until you look again? If nothing can be proven outside of your own awareness, then what if reality only exists when you perceive it? What if you are the only thing that has ever existed, an isolated mind, floating in an infinite void, inventing an entire reality just to keep yourself from noticing the emptiness? Now, consider this. If you cannot prove that anything outside of you exists, can you even prove that you exist? You assume you are a thinking, conscious being. But what if consciousness is just a byproduct of something else, an echo of a thought that was never yours to begin with? If your thoughts arise on their own, if they are not something you control but something that simply happens to you, then what part of you is truly real? If everything you experience is contained inside your own mind, then here is the final, most unsettling question. What if you do not exist at all? What if you are just a thought, a fleeting moment of awareness in an empty void, waiting to disappear? You assume that reality is stable, that the universe around you is solid, unbreakable, built on laws that cannot be undone. You believe that existence is continuous, that no matter what happens, the world will persist. But what if that belief is an illusion? What if reality is not stable at all, but fragile, so delicate that it could collapse at any moment without warning? What if the only thing holding it together is your mind, and the moment you realize the truth, everything begins to unravel? You assume that the world existed before you were born, and that it will continue after you are gone. But what if it only exists because you are here to perceive it? What if reality is not a self-sustaining structure, but something that depends on observation, something that requires consciousness to function? If that is true, then what happens if the observer disappears? Now take it further. Imagine you are in a dream. Inside that dream, everything feels real. The people, the places, the sensations. It all makes sense until something cracks. A glitch in the logic, a detail that doesn't fit, a sudden realization that something is off. The moment you notice it, the dream begins to fall apart. The walls melt away, the people disappear, and the world collapses into nothing. You wake up. What if waking life works the same way? What if you are inside something that only exists because you believe in it, and the moment you begin to see, the cracks, the structure begins to fail? What if reality is not permanent, but an illusion built on rules that only hold as long as they are unquestioned? What if, right now, you are approaching the threshold of collapse, and once you cross it, everything will vanish? Now, take it even further. Have you ever had the feeling that reality was flickering, as if something was shifting just outside your awareness? Have you ever looked at an object and felt for just a second that it wasn't fully real, that if you reached out to touch it, your hand might pass right through? What if those moments were glimpses into the true nature of reality? A reality that is always on the verge of collapse, barely holding itself together. Imagine that everything you experience, every sound, every texture, every sight, is not truly there, but merely projected into your mind. Imagine that reality is like a digital simulation, a world rendered in real time, where objects only exist when you perceive them. If that is true, then what happens if the system fails? What happens when the rendering stops? Now ask yourself, if reality depends on perception, then what happens when no one is looking? What if the world does not continue existing when you turn away, but simply ceases to be, reloading itself only when needed? What if the gaps in time, when you are unconscious, when you forget, when you are not focused, are moments when reality briefly stops? And if reality can pause, then can it also end? Now take it further. What if reality has collapsed before, but each time it does, it resets, erasing everything, including the memory of the collapse itself? What if this is not the first version of existence, but the thousandth, the millionth, or even an infinite recurrence of the same construct, failing and rebuilding itself over and over? What if you have already witnessed the end, but you were reset before you could remember? If reality collapses, then does anything remain? Or does existence simply stop, like a dream that never returns? And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. What happens when the reset fails? If reality is collapsing and rebuilding itself endlessly, what happens if one day it does not come back? And if that moment is approaching, how would you ever know? Right now, you feel like a single unified consciousness. One mind, one perspective, one self-contained awareness moving through the world. You assume that the thoughts in your head belong to one entity, you. But what if that assumption is false? What if your consciousness is not singular, but fractured, split into multiple versions of yourself, each existing independently, unaware of the others? You assume that when you make a decision, there is only one outcome. You turn left instead. Of right you speak instead of staying silent. You choose one path and abandon the other. But what if, in that moment, your consciousness splits? One version of you turning left, another turning right, both continuing forward in separate realities, never realizing that they have been divided. Now consider your own mind. You think, your thoughts originate from one voice. But is that truly the case? Have you ever argued with yourself? Had conflicting emotions, contradicting thoughts? Have you ever felt as if two versions of you were fighting for control? One pushing you in one direction, the other pulling you back. Perhaps that is not just a figure of speech. Perhaps your consciousness is not one entity at all, but a collection of fractured selves, each struggling to take control, each believing it is the true version of you. But now, take it further. What happens when you sleep? Your awareness disappears. Your mind dissolves into unconsciousness. And when you wake up, you assume you are the same person. But how do you know? What if the consciousness that wakes up is not the same one that went to sleep, but a new version, inheriting the memories of the previous self, unaware that it has replaced something else? And if that is true, then how many times has this already happened? What if the you reading these words is simply the latest in a long line of selves, each one believing it is the original while the previous versions have already vanished? Now imagine this. What if, at this very moment, another version of you is splitting away, forming a duplicate consciousness that will make a different choice, take a different path, one you will never be aware of? What if, somewhere out there, a different you is living an entirely separate life, just as convinced as you are that it is the real version? And if your consciousness is constantly splitting, then what does that mean for your sense of self? Are you truly one person, or are you just the current version of a self that has already splintered countless times before? And if you are only a temporary fragment, one of many, then what happens when the next version of you is created? Does this version of you cease to exist, erase the moment a new consciousness emerges? And if so, then here is the final, most unsettling question. How many times have you already been replaced? And how many more times will it happen before you realize that you were never the original at all? Right now, you assume there is an I at the center of your experience, an observer, a self, a continuous presence that experiences life from one moment to the next. But where exactly is this I? Can you find it? Can you point to it? Can you define it in a way that makes it permanent, unchanging, real? You refer to yourself as me, as though you are a fixed entity. But if you look closely, the self you believe in is always shifting, always changing, always dissolving into something new. Your thoughts appear and disappear. Your emotions rise and fade. Your sense of who you are shifts over time. If everything that defines you is in flux, then what exactly is the I that remains constant? Think about a time you were lost in thought, unaware of yourself. In that moment, where was I? It was absent. Your awareness had dissolved into the flow of thinking, only for you to snap back into self-recognition a moment later. But if your sense of self can vanish, even for brief moments, then how do you know it is ever truly there? Now, take it further. You assume that you are the thinker of your thoughts, the controller of your mind. But what if thoughts simply appear on their own, independent of any true self? Try to predict your next thought before it arises. You can't. You have no control over what your mind produces. The thoughts that appear are not chosen by you. They simply emerge, unbidden, from some unknown source. If that is true, then who or what is thinking? If thoughts arise on their own, without a thinker, then is there truly an I behind them? Or is the sense of self just a byproduct of thoughts happening in an empty space? A character your mind invents to make sense of the stream of experiences passing through it. Now, take this even further. Try to find where yourself is located. Is it in your head? In your body? In your memories? When you try to pin it down, it escapes. Always just beyond reach, never solid, never graspable. And if you cannot locate your I, then how can you be sure it exists at all? Imagine waking up one day with no memories, no identity, no sense of past. Would you still be you? Or would you be someone new, an empty awareness without a name? If your sense of self is built entirely on past experiences, then what happens when those experiences are erased? Does the I dissolve along with them? Now consider this. If you are just a collection of passing thoughts, shifting emotions, and decaying memories, if there is no stable, unchanging self at the core of your being, then what remains when all of that is gone? If the I is just an illusion, then who is reading these words right now? You assume that you are an observer, but if there is nothing fixed at the center of that observation, then here is the final, most unsettling question. Have you ever actually existed at all, or are you just a momentary arrangement of awareness, appearing, disappearing, and leaving nothing behind? Who are you? You assume that you are a single, continuous being, that your identity stretches unbroken from the past to the present. You feel like the same person you were yesterday, the same mind that has existed throughout your entire life. But what if that sense of self is an illusion? What if the you that exists now is not the same you that existed a moment ago, but something else entirely? Right now, you are experiencing thoughts. But where do they come from? You assume they arise from your mind, a mind that has been with you since birth. But what if the self you feel, the observer behind your thoughts, is nothing more than a phantom, a flickering illusion that exists only in the moment, disappearing the instant you stop perceiving it? Consider this. Every cell in your body is constantly changing. The skin you have today is not the same skin you had years ago. Your blood, your muscles, your brain, all of it has been replaced over time. If every physical part of you is different, then what remains constant? If every part of you is new, then are you still the same person? Or are you just a new version of yourself, believing in a past that belonged to someone else? Now take this further. Imagine that each moment, your consciousness is not continuing, but restarting. That the observer reading these words is not the same one who began this sentence. You assume your mind is a stream, flowing from one thought to the next. But what if it is not a stream, but a series of individual flashes, each moment creating a new version of you, while the previous one disappears forever? If this is true, then the self you think you are right now has only existed for this exact moment. It was born into existence just seconds ago, complete with memories, emotions, a sense of the past, only to dissolve and be replaced by the next version of you, which will do the same. But here's where it gets worse. If the you that existed a second ago is gone, and the you that exists now is temporary, then what happens when the next version of you takes over? Are you truly the same person? Or is each version of you nothing more than a phantom, believing itself to be real for just an instant before vanishing into nothingness? You assume memory holds you together, that recalling your past connects you to it. But memory is not identity. Memory is just a reconstruction, a collection of stored thoughts that your mind assembles to create the illusion of a single self. But what if that illusion is false? What if your mind is simply borrowing past experiences, piecing them together into a narrative so that each version of you believes it has always existed? Now consider this. When you go to sleep, your awareness disappears. The next morning, you wake up and feel like the same person. But how do you know? How do you know that the version of you who went to sleep was not simply erased, replaced by a new consciousness that only believes it has existed before? What if the you that began reading this is already gone? What if you are just the latest in a long line of temporary selves, each one arriving, experiencing, and then fading before it even realizes what is happening? And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. How many times have you already disappeared, and how much longer before the next version of you takes over, believing once again that it has always been here? Right now, you believe you are awake. You assume that what you see, hear, and experience is real. But how do you know? What if everything around you, the world, time, even your own thoughts, is nothing more than a dream? You have dreamed before. Inside a dream, everything feels real. You see places, meet people, feel emotions, experience events. You believe in the reality of the dream, never questioning it until you wake up. Then, and only then, do you realize that everything you just experienced was not real at all. Now ask yourself, how do you know this moment is any different? You assume you are conscious. You assume you are experiencing an external reality. But inside every dream, you assumed the same thing until the moment it ended. What if you never wake up? Now take it further. In a dream, you experience time, but time inside a dream does not always match the time of the outside world. You may live an entire lifetime inside a dream, only to wake up and realize it lasted minutes. What if your entire life is the same? What if every experience you have had, your past, your memories, your relationships, are just part of a long, intricate dream, unfolding inside a mind that does not belong to you? And if that is true, then who is dreaming you? Now, take it even further. Inside a dream, you assume you are making choices. But are you? Or is the dream simply unfolding on its own, creating the illusion of free will? Think about it. You do not decide to start dreaming. The dream simply happens to you. Your mind constructs an entire world, complete with logic, emotions, and even fabricated memories. Memories of things that never actually happened. How many of your memories could be false memories, constructed inside this dream to make it feel more real? And if you are inside a dream right now, then what happens when you reach the end? What if right now you are moments away from waking up? What if the reality you are about to wake into is completely different from anything you have ever known? Now take it even further. What if you are not the dreamer, but the dream itself? What if the consciousness experiencing this moment is not the one dreaming, but just a character inside the dream? Imagine waking up to find that everything you have ever known, your memories, your identity, your sense of self, was nothing more than an illusion created by a mind that is not yours. What if the real you is somewhere else, lost in an endless sleep, unaware that this reality is just a temporary hallucination? And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. Will you ever wake up, or are you destined to keep dreaming forever, believing every time that this is real? You assume that the universe is complete, that every part of reality is accounted for, that existence unfolds without error. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if there are missing pieces, gaps in reality that you were never meant to notice? Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly forgotten why? Have you ever experienced a moment of time that felt missing, gone without explanation? What if those were not just lapses in memory? What if they were glitches, errors in reality, where the universe failed to load properly? Now take it further. You believe that space is continuous, that every point between one place and another exists in a smooth, uninterrupted way. But what if the universe is not continuous? What if, at any given moment, large portions of reality are simply missing? Imagine a video game where the world only exists where the player is looking. The buildings, the roads, the landscapes, they only appear when they are needed. But if the game is poorly designed, glitches appear, objects fail to load, parts of the environment flicker in and out of existence, entire sections of reality simply disappear. Now, what if your universe works the same way? What if reality only renders what you are observing, and everything outside your focus is not simply unseen, but non-existent? Now take it further. Have you ever seen something change when you were not looking? a shadow in a different place, an object not where you left it, a detail that suddenly seems off. You assume that these are just tricks of the mind, mistakes in memory, illusions of perception. But what if they are not? What if you are catching reality in the act of rewriting itself? What if, right now, portions of the universe are missing? Entire locations, people, and events that simply did not load correctly. But because your mind assumes reality is complete, you never notice. Now, take it even further. What if reality does not just glitch but resets? Imagine that, in the space between your thoughts, the universe occasionally fails to reload properly, causing you to experience subtle, unexplainable inconsistencies. Person you were certain existed no longer does. A fact you knew for sure has changed. A memory that once felt real now seems like it never happened. What if those are not errors in your memory, but evidence that reality itself is being altered in real time? Now ask yourself, if reality is not fully stable, if pieces of the universe can disappear without warning, then how much of your world has already been lost? And if the universe can fail to load entirely, if whole parts of existence can vanish without you realizing, then here is the final, most unsettling question. What if you are standing in a missing part of the universe right now without knowing that you were never meant to be here? You assume that your thoughts are complete, that when you have an idea, make a decision, or feel an emotion, your consciousness moves from one fully formed state to another. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if your consciousness is never truly complete, always unfinished, always in flux, always dissolving before it fully takes shape? Right now you are thinking. But where do thoughts begin? Try to pinpoint the exact moment a thought is born. You cannot. The process of thinking is continuous, shifting, emerging from nowhere, dissolving into the next moment before you can capture it. You never truly finish a thought. You only move away from it, abandoning it in favor of the next. But what if this applies not just to your thoughts but to you? What if your entire consciousness is unfinished, forever incomplete, existing only in a liminal state, never fully forming, never solidifying, always on the edge of being something but never quite arriving? Take this further. You assume that your identity is stable, that the self you experience is whole, intact, a singular awareness moving through time. But if every moment is incomplete, if your mind is always shifting, never truly settling, then are you ever actually fully conscious at any given moment? Or are you simply a series of unfinished awarenesses, each believing itself to be whole, even as it dissolves into the next? Consider what happens when you lose your train of thought. One moment, you're thinking about something, and the next, it's gone. But where did it go? You did not consciously erase it. It simply vanished, incomplete, as if it had never existed. Now, ask yourself, how many of your thoughts have already disappeared before they were ever fully realized? How many moments of awareness have begun but never finished? And if your thoughts are incomplete, your emotions unstable, your awareness constantly shifting, then what does that mean for your sense of self? What if you are not a single, complete person, but a series of unfinished selves, each emerging for an instant, only to be replaced by another before it can ever become whole? Now, take it even further. What if you have never actually existed as a complete being? What if every version of you, the self that existed a second ago, the self that existed a year ago, was never fully realized, never fully formed, just a fragmented moment in a stream of incomplete consciousnesses? You assume that you are becoming something moving toward a fully realized version of yourself. But what if there is no final version? What if you are forever stuck in an unfinished state, always transitioning, never arriving, never truly whole? If you cannot complete a thought, if you cannot fully capture your own awareness, then what happens when your consciousness ends? Does it dissolve into nothingness, like an abandoned thought? Or does it continue trying to form, forever incomplete, forever unfinished, forever reaching towards something that will never be? And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. Are you just an unfinished idea, one that was never meant to be completed? And if you were never meant to be complete, then were you ever real to begin with? You assume that you are a single, continuous being, that the you that exists in this moment is the same you that existed yesterday, last year, or even decades ago. But is that truly the case? Or are you something much more fragile, much more temporary, a self that is constantly vanishing, only to be replaced by something new? Right now, as you experience this moment, you feel a sense of identity. But where does that identity come from? Your memories? Your personality? The thoughts running through your mind? What if all of those things are unstable, constantly shifting, making you a completely different person from one moment to the next? Consider your memories. You believe they hold your identity together, that they form the foundation of who you are. But memories are unreliable. Every time you recall something, your brain rewrites it, altering details, losing fragments, blending truth with fiction. If your past is constantly being rewritten, then the version of you that existed years ago is not the same person you are today. But take this further. Every 7 years, every cell in your body has been replaced. The physical structure that makes up you is not the same structure that existed a decade ago. If every part of you is different, then what remains constant? If everything that physically defines you has changed, are you still the same person? Or are you simply an updated version, a replacement that only believes it has been here all along? Now consider your thoughts. You assume that your mind is one continuous stream, flowing from past to present without interruption. But what if that too is an illusion? What if consciousness does not persist through time, but is instead a series of disconnected moments, each one existing briefly before fading away, only for the next moment to take its place? Imagine that every second your consciousness resets, forming a new version of you that inherits the memories of the previous one. Each version believes it has always existed, unaware that the self from the last moment has already disappeared. If that is true, then you are not a single permanent being. You are nothing more than a sequence of temporary selves, appearing one after another, each one believing it is the original, each one blind to the fact that countless others have already been lost. Now take it further. What if the version of you reading this right now is the only one that has ever existed? What if everything before this moment was experienced by another version of you, one that is already gone, erased the instant this new awareness took its place? And if that is true, then how many times has this already happened? How many versions of you have existed and vanished, believing they were permanent, never realizing that they were nothing more than temporary illusions, flickering in and out of existence? And if you are just another temporary self, one in a long chain of vanishing consciousnesses, then what happens when the next version of you arrives? Does this version of you cease to exist? Will you, this exact version of you right now, ever experience another moment? Or are you already on the verge of disappearing, about to be replaced by yet another fleeting version of yourself, just as countless others have been before. And if that is the case, then here is the final, most unsettling question. Has the real you already been lost, replaced so many times that nothing remains of who you once were? And if that is true, then how much longer do you have before you too are erased? You assume that there is a final moment, a last breath, an end point where everything stops. You believe that life follows a linear path, leading from birth to death, from awareness to unconsciousness, and that when the end comes, you will simply cease to be. But what if the end is not an end at all? What if, instead of fading into nothingness, you awaken, only to realize that you had never truly lived in the first place? You think of death as the final event, the absolute termination of self. But how can you be sure? You have never experienced non-existence. Every single moment of your life has been spent existing, thinking, feeling, perceiving. You assume that there is an opposite state, a void, a blankness beyond awareness. But how can you know? If you were to enter true nothingness, who would be left to recognize it? Now take it further. Imagine that death is not an exit, but a doorway. You reach what you believe to be the last moment, expecting darkness, but instead, you find yourself waking up, not as a continuation of this life, but as something else entirely. What if everything you have experienced was nothing more than a dream, a simulation, an illusion designed to make you believe in its reality? What if, upon dying, you realize that you had never truly been alive? Now take it even further. Have you ever had a dream that felt so real that upon waking, you struggled to remember that it was not reality? Have you ever felt, for just a moment, that waking life itself felt strangely artificial, as if something was slightly off, something was missing? What if that feeling is not just a fleeting thought, but a buried truth? What if, right now, you are still asleep, trapped inside a construct of the mind, waiting for the real awakening to come? Imagine opening your eyes after death and seeing a world so vast, so beyond comprehension, that everything you had ever known suddenly felt small, meaningless, like a shadow of something greater. Imagine realizing in that instant that every memory you ever had was fabricated, not to deceive you, but to prepare you. What if this entire life was never meant to be an ending, but merely a passage into something you had forgotten? Now consider this. What if you have already died before? What if this is not your first existence, but one in a long sequence of lives, each ending with an awakening, each beginning with an amnesia so deep that you believe it is the first time? If death is just a transition, then how many times have you already woken up, only to forget and start again? Now take it further. If you are inside a dream, and the dream is all you know, then how can you ever escape it? What if every attempt to wake up only leads to another dream? What if the final awakening is something you have been searching for across lifetimes, only to find that there is no end, only layer after layer of consciousness, each one revealing a greater reality beyond it? And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. If you ever truly woke up, if you finally broke free from all illusions, would you even recognize yourself? Or would the version of you that exists now cease to be, erased by the realization that it had never been real to begin with? You wake up in the morning, stretch, look around, and begin your day. You assume that yesterday happened, that the events of your past are stored somewhere inside your mind, solid and unchanging. But how do you know? What if yesterday never actually happened? What if every day you wake up in a completely new existence, with your memories fabricated on the spot to make you believe that time has been flowing normally? Right now, you can remember things. What you ate yesterday, where you went, what you did. But those memories exist only in your mind. They are not tangible proof of the past. You do not experience yesterday. You only experience your recollection of it. And recollections can be altered, rewritten, or even created from nothing. Imagine this. You go to sleep tonight, and while you sleep, every memory of yesterday is erased. When you wake up, how would you ever know that anything was missing? If your mind constructed new memories overnight, you would believe in them completely, never questioning that they were false. Now take this even further. What if this has already happened? What if every single night, your past is erased and rebuilt, with slight alterations, minor adjustments, just enough to keep the illusion intact? Every morning, you wake up assuming you have a continuous life, that today follows yesterday, that time is moving forward. But that assumption is based entirely on memory, and memory is unreliable. Consider dreams. When you are inside a dream, you accept it as reality. Your mind generates false memories, placing you in a scenario that you believe has context. In a dream, you do not question how you got there. You simply accept that you have always been there, because your brain supplies the missing information to make the illusion complete. But what if waking life works the same way? What if every morning your consciousness is dropped into a reality? One where the past has been manufactured for you, complete with memories, relationships, and a history that you believe in but have never actually lived. If that is true, then how many of your past experiences were ever real? If every memory can be rewritten, then how much of your life has already been erased? Now take this even further. What if yesterday never existed at all? What if your entire life has only ever been this single moment, right now? And everything you think you remember is just a backstory created to make it feel as though you have been here for longer. Imagine that reality is generated fresh each time you wake up, and everything before this moment was simply a story programmed into your mind to create the illusion of a continuous timeline. If that were the case, how would you ever be able to tell? And if you cannot prove that yesterday happened, then how do you know tomorrow will happen? What if this moment, this exact experience, is the only thing that has ever truly existed? And if that is the case, then here is the final, most unsettling question. Have you already lost entire lifetimes to the void, lifetimes you will never remember? And if it happens again tonight, how will the next version of you ever know what was taken? Right now, you are in the middle of something. This thought, this second, this breath. But can you ever truly finish a moment? The second you try to claim it, it is already gone, replaced by the next. No matter how hard you try, you never actually complete the present. You only transition from one fragment to another, endlessly, without ever reaching an end. You assume that actions are completed, that events have clear resolutions. But what if every moment is only an interruption, never truly arriving at finality? What if every breath you take, every word you read, every step you walk is just an unfinished version of something that never fully happens? You tell yourself that things end, that life moves forward in completed steps. But examine any experience closely, and you will find that nothing is ever truly done. When you finish a conversation, where does it go? When you reach the end of a day, do you truly leave it behind? Or do echoes of it remain in memory, When you wake up in the morning, do you begin anew? Or are you simply resuming a story that never actually ended? Now, take this even further. If you cannot complete a single moment, if every second simply feeds into another, then does anything ever resolve? Or is existence itself an incomplete process, one that never reaches an ultimate conclusion? Think about this. If time is infinite, then every moment is just a fraction of something larger. No matter how much time passes, you will never arrive at the end of time. There will always be another second, another event, another thought. But if there is no final moment, then does any single moment ever truly matter? Imagine trying to finish a sentence only to realize that the sentence never fully stops. It only dissolves into the next. Imagine trying to reach a destination only to find that the closer you get, the more the path extends forward, ensuring that you are always almost there, but never quite arriving. What if your entire life works the same way? You assume that you will reach a conclusion, that there will be a final moment, a last breath, a true ending. But if every moment is an unfinished transition to the next, then will you ever actually reach the end of your existence? Or are you trapped in an endless continuation, where no experience is ever truly complete? Now, take it one step further. If nothing ever truly finishes, then how do you know that this moment is not just a fragment of something larger, something that you cannot perceive? What if your entire life is just an unfinished thought in the mind of something far greater? An idea that was never fully formed, an experiment left halfway through. And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. What happens when you realize that you were never meant to reach the end? That you are simply a half-finished story, trapped in an infinite process of never truly being complete? And if you have always been in an unfinished moment, then will you ever escape? Or will you always be waiting for something that never arrives? You believe in the future. You assume that tomorrow will come, that the next moment will arrive, that time will continue unfolding just as it always has. But what if the future is an illusion? What if it doesn't exist at all, and what you perceive as what's next is nothing more than a phantom, something that was never there to begin with? You plan for the future, prepare for it, think about it. But have you ever experienced the future directly? You have only ever existed in the now, moving from moment to moment. The future has never arrived. It has only ever been something imagined, something your mind projects forward. But if you can never actually experience the future, then how do you know it exists at all? Imagine walking toward the horizon. No matter how far you go, it remains in the distance. You never truly reach it, only chase after it endlessly. Now consider that time may work the same way. You are always moving toward the future, but you never actually get there. The moment you arrive at what you once called the future, it is no longer the future. It has transformed into the present. The future itself is untouchable, a ghostly concept that dissolves the moment you try to grasp it. If the future is always disappearing before you can experience it, then does it ever truly exist? What if time is not a path leading forward, but a construct your mind creates to prevent you from seeing the void? What if everything that will ever happen has already happened? Or worse, will never happen at all? Now, take this further. If the future does not exist, then what are you moving toward? You assume that life progresses, that there is a next step, a next second, a next day. But what if your mind is simply fabricating the illusion of forward motion while you remain completely still? What if your entire existence is not a journey through time, but a single moment stretched out and reinterpreted over and over so that you do not notice the emptiness? What if the future has already happened? Or worse, what if it never will? You assume that time flows in one direction, but what if that is just a limitation of your perception? If the future is not real, then everything you think is still ahead of you is already gone. The choices you believe you are yet to make have already been made, or perhaps were never possible to begin with. The people you think you have yet to meet, the places you believe you will go, what if they were never written into reality? Imagine that your life is a book with the final pages torn out. You assume there is more to the story, that events will continue unfolding. That meaning exists beyond this point. But what if there are no final pages? What if you are already at the end, and your mind is simply stalling, filling in the blanks with illusions so that you never realize the truth? And if the future does not exist, then what does that mean for your past? You believe you have a history, that you have lived through moments leading up to now. But what if that too is just a fabrication? What if all of time is simply an elaborate illusion, a self-contained loop designed to keep you from noticing that nothing has ever truly moved at all? If the future is already dead, if it never existed to begin with, then what are you waiting for? What are you hoping for? What are you moving toward? And if you can never truly reach the future, then here is the final, most unsettling question. Are you actually moving forward in time? Or have you been standing still in an eternal present, believing in something that was never real? Everything you see, hear, and feel, everything you believe to be real, is only an interpretation of reality, not reality itself. Right now, as you look at the world around you, your mind is constructing what you see. Your brain does not experience reality directly. It processes signals, flashes of light, electrical impulses, vibrations in the air, and translates them into an image, a sound, a sensation. But if everything you perceive is just an interpretation, then how can you ever know what is truly real? What if reality is nothing more than an illusion, one that never ends? Now take it further. Have you ever noticed that reality is only as detailed as you need it to be? Look around you. You assume that everything is solid, real, constant, but your eyes can only focus on a small part of your surroundings at any given time. Everything outside of your focus is blurred, incomplete, waiting to be filled in. What if, like a video game, reality only renders itself when you look at it? What if the world behind you does not exist until you turn around? And even then, what you see is only a constructed version, rebuilt in real time by your brain. Now take it even further. What if your past, the memories you rely on to define yourself, is nothing more than an illusion as well? Your brain does not store perfect records of the past. It does not preserve reality as it was. Instead, it recreates it every time you remember it, filling in gaps, altering details, changing the story. Every time you recall a moment, your mind does not retrieve it. It rebuilds it. If your memory is constantly changing, then what if your past is being rewritten over and over without you ever realizing it? What if every moment of your life is an illusion that is never truly the same twice? Now, take it further. If your mind is constantly reconstructing the past and your perception of the present is just an interpretation, then what about the future? You assume the future does not yet exist, that it is unwritten. But if reality itself is a fabrication, then the future may already be constructed, waiting for you to experience it. What if time does not flow at all? What if everything, past, present, and future, is already there, but you are simply moving through an illusion of time, experiencing one moment at a time, believing it is unfolding in real time. Now take it even further. What if nothing ever changes? What if every moment, every experience, every choice you make is predetermined, but your awareness is simply shifting from one moment to the next, tricking you into thinking that you are making choices? You believe that you are alive, that you are experiencing something real. But if your thoughts, your perceptions, your memories, and even time itself are all just layers of illusion, then here is the final, most unsettling question. Is there anything behind the illusion at all? Or are you trapped in something that has no end? An endless illusion with no way out? Close your eyes and try to capture this very moment, the exact present in which you exist. Not the second before, not the second after, but this single frozen point in time. But the moment you try to grasp it, it's already gone. Time moves forward, always slipping just beyond reach. You are always in the present, yet you can never truly hold on to it. By the time your mind registers the now, it has already become the past. You live in a state of perpetual delay, experiencing only echoes of a reality that is already gone. This is the paradox of the present that never was, a disturbing realization that the now you believe in does not exist in the way you assume. But what does that mean for you? Neuroscientists have discovered something unsettling. Your brain does not process reality in real time. Every experience, every sight, every sound takes milliseconds to register. By the time you react, your brain has already rewritten the past to create the illusion that you are living in the present. In other words, you are always slightly behind reality, living not in the now, but in a constructed version of the past. But if you are always delayed, when do you actually exist? If the present is never truly experienced in real time, are you always lagging behind yourself, like an echo of a person who is already gone? Now take it one step further. What if this delay is not just milliseconds? What if your entire life has already played out, and you are only just now experiencing it in slow motion? What if your consciousness is nothing more than a replay of something that has already ended? Let's go deeper. Imagine that reality operates like a film projector. The frames of your existence are already laid out, but you are forced to watch them unfold, believing you are actively living them. You assume you are making choices in real time. But if every experience takes time to register in your mind, how? Do you know that those choices haven't already been made? That the events have already happened, and you are simply playing out a script? If you are always reacting to a delayed version of reality, how can you be sure that you have any control over it? What if the present is simply a reconstruction of the past, and the future is already decided, waiting for your mind to catch up? If this is true, then every moment you have ever experienced was not truly yours. You have never actually lived in the present. You have only ever been watching the past unfold, believing it to be now, which means you are already gone, living as an afterimage of something that no longer exists. Now, consider the alternative. If the present is constantly slipping away, if every moment fades before it can be truly experienced, then does the present even exist at all? If something cannot be captured, cannot be held, cannot be experienced without delay, then is it real? Perhaps the present moment is just a convenient illusion, something your brain fabricates so that you do not notice the void. Because if the present does not exist, then neither does your experience of it. And if experience itself is an illusion, then what are you? Are you a person living moment by moment, or are you just a consciousness trapped in a continuous afterimage, forever chasing a present that never was. And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. If you are only ever experiencing the past, then has your life already ended? Right now, you believe that you are the one observing reality, that you are a mind looking out at the world, processing information, and making sense of everything you experience. You assume that you are the one watching, that your perspective is central, that your consciousness is the point from which all reality is filtered. But what if you are not the observer at all? What if there is something else watching you, and you have simply forgotten that it exists? Now take it further. Close your eyes and focus on the sensation of awareness itself, the part of you that is experiencing everything. Try to pinpoint exactly who or what is observing your thoughts. You assume that you are watching your thoughts, but what if the observer is something else, something hidden, something separate, something that is not you? Consider this. Have you ever had the feeling that you are being watched even when no one is there? Have you ever felt like you are not alone inside your own mind, as if some part of you is aware of things beyond your understanding? What if your consciousness is not the original observer, but something that was placed inside a system that was already being watched? Now take it even further. Imagine a security camera. It records everything, but it does not make choices. It does not interpret what it sees. It simply observes. What if that is what your consciousness is? What if you are not an active participant in reality, but simply an observer that was placed inside an already existing world, watching it unfold? Now consider this. If reality is being observed, then who or what is doing the observing? If there is something watching you, then what happens when you stop looking? What if, right now, as you focus on this thought, another observer is watching you from a perspective you can never access? Now take it even further. If the observer exists, but you cannot remember it, then what if you were never supposed to? What if, at some point in your existence, you knew that you were being observed, but that knowledge was erased, hidden from you, replaced with the illusion that you are the one in control? Imagine a dream where you are being watched by something just outside your field of vision. Every time you turn your head, it vanishes. Every time you try to focus on it, it moves just out of reach. What if that is not just a dream? What if there is something observing you right now, but your mind has been structured in such a way that you are incapable of perceiving it? Now consider this. If you were once aware of the observer, then what would happen if you remembered? Would the illusion collapse? Would reality change? Would you wake up only to find that this entire experience was simply something being monitored, tested, watched? And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. What happens when the observer looks away? Do you continue to exist, or do you simply vanish like a character in a story, disappearing the moment the reader stops reading? Look around you. Observe your surroundings, the objects, the colors, the sensations. You assume that reality is stable, that everything you see has been here the whole time, existing in a continuous, unbroken state. But what if reality is not fixed at all? What if it is being rebuilt, moment by moment, with each new frame of consciousness, and you are only experiencing the illusion of continuity? Right now, your brain is constructing reality for you. The colors you see, the sounds you hear, the objects in front of you. None of them exist in the way you assume. Light enters your eyes, your brain interprets the signals, and only then do you perceive a world. But what if nothing exists until your brain rebuilds it? You assume that the room you were in 5 minutes ago is still exactly as you left it. But can you prove it? The moment you step back inside, your brain recreates it for you. The walls, the furniture, the temperature, all of it is perceived only when you re-enter. So, what exists in the moments you are not looking? Now take it further. Imagine waking up in the morning. You assume your bed, your room, your home have been there all night. But your awareness was not there to verify it. When you open your eyes, reality comes back into existence. Not because it was waiting for you, but because your brain is constructing it on demand, like a film that only plays when you are watching. Now consider this. If reality must be rebuilt every time you perceive it, then how do you know it is being rebuilt the same way? What if each time you look away, the world resets, and what you see when you return is just a slightly altered reconstruction? If your memories are part of this construction process, then how do you know that the past even existed before this moment? What if each new second, your mind does not just rebuild the present, but also reprograms the past, filling in the gaps with memories that never actually happened? Now, take it even further. What if every time you blink, everything disappears, and what returns is not the same reality, but a replicated version, an entirely new construction, one that only mimics what was there before? Imagine a world where nothing truly persists, where each moment is a completely new frame of existence, and your memories are just mental placeholders used to give you the illusion of continuity. Now consider this. What if the you who existed 5 minutes ago is not the same you who exists now? What if every moment your consciousness is rebuilt, with all of your memories, all of your emotions, all of your thoughts fabricated on the spot? And if this is true, then how many times has this already happened? If reality is constantly being reconstructed, then how many versions of reality have already been erased? How many times has the world collapsed and been rebuilt without you ever realizing it? And if the version of you that existed a second ago is already gone, then here is the final, most unsettling question. What if the next version of you is not the same person at all? And what happens when the rebuilding stops? You believe that you know things. You assume that your knowledge is real, that facts exist, that reality can be understood. Every moment of your life is built upon this assumption, that your thoughts, beliefs, and experiences are connected to something true. But what if knowledge itself is an illusion? What if, no matter how much you learn, no matter how much you believe you understand, you can never truly know anything at all? Right now, you are certain that the past happened. You remember it. You have proof, photos, documents, events stored in your mind. But how do you know that those memories are real? How do you know that your brain did not create them moments ago, fabricating an entire history just to make it feel as if you have always been here? What if every piece of knowledge you have, every fact, was simply placed into your mind, fully formed? The moment you became aware of it, would you be able to tell the difference? Now take it further. Every time you learn something new, you assume that you have gained knowledge, that your understanding of reality has expanded. But where did that knowledge come from? Did you truly learn it, or was it already inside you, waiting to be uncovered, meaning that you never actually gained anything, only revealed something that was always there? You assume that knowledge is built on proof. If something can be tested, verified, and observed, then it must be true. But what if all proof is just another layer of illusion? You believe in science, but science relies on perception, and perception is not reality. It is only an interpretation. The color red exists only in your mind. Outside of you, It is just wavelengths of light. Sound does not exist as you hear it. It is simply vibrations. You believe the world is solid, but on the atomic level, it is mostly empty space. If even your most basic perceptions are not accurate, then how can anything you know be trusted? Now take it even further. Every thought in your head came from somewhere, from things you were taught, from books, from conversations, from experiences. But if every thought you have was placed there by something else, then is anything you know truly your own? If all knowledge is received from outside sources, then what if knowledge is just an endless chain of borrowed ideas, with no original truth at all? If someone told you that the universe is an illusion, how would you prove them wrong? You would point to what you know. But what if everything you know was created inside the illusion itself? Now consider this. If all knowledge is just information stored inside the system, then how can anything inside the system ever prove whether the system is real? It would be like a dream trying to prove that it is not a dream. Now take it even further. If knowledge requires proof, but proof is always based on previous knowledge, then how do you ever get to a first truth? What if everything you know is just a self-referencing loop, an infinite cycle of ideas that only make sense because they refer to each other, but have no actual foundation? If that is true, then how can you ever be sure that anything is real? You assume that you exist, that your thoughts are real, that your awareness proves that something is true. But what if even that is an illusion? What if your thoughts are not your own, but simply self-generating patterns of information, a byproduct of something beyond your understanding? And if you cannot even be sure that your thoughts are real, if you cannot prove that you are the one thinking, then here is the final, most unsettling question. If you can never know anything for certain, then do you even exist at all? Or are you just another part of the illusion, believing in a truth that was never there? You assume that time is moving forward, that you are traveling through the present toward an unknown future while the past fades into memory. You believe that time is something real, something solid, something that exists beyond your perception. But what if time is not real at all? What if time is just a ghost, an illusion of movement where nothing is actually changing, only the perception of change? Now take it further. Close your eyes and try to feel time passing. Try to grasp the movement of now, to hold on to this exact moment before it vanishes. You cannot. The moment you focus on the present, it is already gone. So where does it go? What if time is not flowing forward, but is instead collapsing behind you as you move through it, leaving behind nothing but shadows of moments that no longer exist? Now take it even further. You remember your past. You believe that it really happened, that every moment of your life has led to this one. But where is that past? You can recall it, but you cannot access it. You cannot return to it, touch it, verify that it still exists. You only have memories, and memories are unreliable. If the past cannot be accessed, then how do you know it was ever there? What if time is not a line stretching from past to future, but instead a series of frozen moments, each one flickering into existence for an instant before vanishing forever? If that is true, then how do you know that the you who existed yesterday is the same you who exists now? What if your past self is already gone, erased as soon as this new version of you was formed? Each version believing it has always been here, unaware that it is nothing more than a ghost of a previous self. Now take it even further. If time does not move, If it is merely an illusion created by memory, then what about the future? You assume that the future does not exist yet, that it has not been written. But if time is just a collection of frozen moments, then what if the future is already there, waiting to be discovered? What if you are not traveling through time at all, but instead, time is being revealed to you moment by moment as if you were reading a book, only experiencing one page at a time? Now, ask yourself, if you are only ever experiencing one moment at a time, if each moment is independent, disconnected, fleeting, then what if you are not truly alive, but simply an echo moving through something that has already happened? What if you are nothing more than a ghost of time, believing you are making choices, believing you are moving forward, when in reality, you are simply trapped inside a sequence that is already complete? And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. If time is just an illusion, then what happens when the illusion ends? Will you move forward into something new, or will you simply disappear, a ghost that was never real to begin with? You assume that to observe something is to know it, that seeing reality confirms its existence, that by watching, you are gaining an understanding of what is real. But what if observation itself is a curse, one that traps you inside a reality that only exists because you are looking? What if the moment you observe something, you change it, not just in perception, but in its very nature? What if the act of watching is what forces reality into place, meaning that the truth of existence can never be known, only distorted? You believe that your mind is separate from what it sees, that you are an observer moving through a fixed world, perceiving things that exist independently of you. But how can you be sure? When you look at something, your brain interprets what is there, but does it see the truth? Or does it create one? If everything you perceive is filtered through your own mind, then are you really seeing reality? Or are you only ever seeing a version of it, one shaped by the very act of observation? Now take it further. Science tells us that particles behave differently when they are observed. In the famous double-slit experiment, light and electrons act as both waves and particles. But the moment they are observed, their behavior changes. The simple act of looking forces them into a specific state, as if reality itself is deciding how to exist based on whether or not it is being watched. But if subatomic particles, if the very building blocks of existence, are affected by observation, then what does that mean for everything else? What if reality itself is not fixed, but fluid, shifting, waiting to be seen? What if the world behind you does not exist in any definite form until you turn around? What if everything outside of your direct perception is undefined, just a formless field of probabilities, waiting to collapse into something real the moment you focus on it? If the universe only takes shape when you look at it, then does it even exist when you are not watching? Now take it further. Have you ever had the feeling that something changes when you are not looking? That objects shift, that details rearrange themselves, that the world is subtly different in ways you cannot explain? What if this is not just a trick of the mind, but a glimpse into the true nature of reality? A reality that only becomes solid when it is seen. If the act of observing forces the universe into existence, then what happens when you look away? Does the world remain? Or does it fade back into uncertainty, waiting to be rebuilt when you return? What if you are not an observer of reality, but a creator of it? If observing something forces it into existence, then does that mean reality depends on you? If everything outside your perception is undefined, then what happens when you sleep? What happens when you forget? Does the world simply pause, waiting for you to return? And if reality requires an observer to exist, then here is the most unsettling question of all. Who or what is watching you? If reality only takes form when observed, then does that mean your existence also depends on something else perceiving you? If you are the observer of the world, then is there something greater, some hidden force, observing you in return, keeping you in existence the same way you keep reality in existence? And if that observer ever looked away, would you disappear? If everything depends on being observed, then what happens when the last observer vanishes? When no one is left to see, does the universe itself cease to exist? Or does it simply reset, waiting for the next consciousness to force it back into being, unaware that it has already been erased before? You assume that the universe is vast, full of endless possibilities, stretching out in all directions beyond your reach. You believe that reality is independent of you, that time moves forward, that new experiences await you every moment. But what if the universe is not expanding, not changing, not even moving forward? What if you are trapped inside a memory-locked reality, one where nothing new ever truly happens, where existence is simply a loop built from your own mind, and where the past is the only thing that keeps the illusion alive? Now take it further. Memory defines your world. Every time you wake up, you assume that the universe around you continues to exist because you remember it from yesterday. But what if memory itself is the only proof that anything exists at all? If you had no memory of yesterday, would yesterday still exist? If you forgot your entire life up until this moment, would you still be the same person? What if the only thing keeping reality together is the fact that you remember it? Now take it even further. Think about how time works in dreams. Inside a dream, everything seems logical. You feel as though you have been there for a long time, as if you have memories from before the dream started. But the moment you wake up, you realize that those memories were fabricated, created in the moment, just to maintain the illusion that the dream had a past. What if waking life works the same way? What if your memories of the past were only created, right now, constructed in real time, just to make it feel as if your life has always been here? Now consider this. What if you are not actually moving through time, but instead, your mind is simply cycling through a pre-existing loop of memories, replaying them again and again, convincing you that they are new experiences? Imagine waking up tomorrow, only to realize that nothing new will ever happen, that the universe is simply cycling through the same sequence, over and over, rearranging the details just enough to make it feel like time is progressing. What if that has already happened, but your memory has been reset each time, keeping you from realizing the truth? Now take it even further. If the universe is locked inside memory, then how do you know that it ever existed at all? What if the only reason you believe in the past is because your mind was programmed to believe in it? What if the entire history of your existence, every moment, every event, every detail, was fabricated just seconds ago, giving you the illusion that you have lived an entire life? And if that is true, then what happens when the memory cycle ends? Does the universe simply reset again, erasing all awareness, all existence, all proof that anything ever happened? Now consider this. If your memories are the only thing keeping the universe intact, then what happens when you forget something? Does that part of reality simply cease to exist? If you can no longer recall a person, a place, an event, does it mean that it was never there? And if enough of your memories fade, if enough details are lost, will reality itself eventually disappear? Now, take it even further. What if you have already forgotten entire versions of yourself, Lives that once existed but were erased, leaving behind nothing but echoes. What if your entire reality has been rewritten again and again, and you have been reset with a fresh set of memories each time, each version of you believing that it has always been here, never realizing how many past versions have already been lost? And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. When the last memory fades, when everything you have ever known is gone, will you still exist? Or will the universe itself simply vanish, erased along with you? You wake up in the morning and decide what to wear. You pick between coffee or tea. You choose a route to take, a word to say, a thought to think. Every moment you feel in control, navigating your life through a series of choices that shape your future. But what if that feeling is nothing more than an illusion? What if every choice you make was already determined before you even knew you were making it? You assume that your thoughts emerge freely, that your decisions are a product of your own will. But where does a decision truly begin? When you decide to move your hand, is it you who decides? Or is the impulse already forming deep in your brain before you ever become aware of it? Neuroscientists have discovered something disturbing. Your brain registers a decision before your conscious mind does. Studies show that the neurons responsible for making a choice activate milliseconds before you become aware of the choice itself. This means that by the time you feel like you're deciding, your brain has already made the decision for you. If this is true, then who or what is really in control? Now take it even further. Imagine two paths before you. You believe you can choose either, that you are free to pick a direction. But what if, deep inside your mind, everything that makes you you, your genetics, your upbringing, your past experiences, has already determined which path you will take? If every choice is just a reaction to prior causes, then are you truly choosing at all? Or are you just following a pre-written script, moving through the motions of a life that has already been set in place? Now, consider this. If you could rewind time to the exact moment before you made a choice, would you ever be able to choose differently? If the same conditions were present, if the same neurons fired in the same way, wouldn't the outcome always be the same? You assume that you could have chosen differently, but if every choice is determined by prior causes, then the alternative never truly existed. It was just an illusion. And if you have never truly made a free choice in your life, then what does that mean for your past? Did you ever choose your own beliefs? Did you ever choose the person you became? Or were you always destined to become exactly what you are from the moment you were born? If the answer is no, if you are nothing more than a product of cause and effect, then what does that mean for the future? You believe that tomorrow is open, that you can shape your life in any direction. But if every action you take is the inevitable result of everything that came before it, then your future is already set, written before you ever get there. And if the future is already decided, then are you truly living at all? Or are you simply a passenger, watching the illusion of choice unfold, believing you have control when you never did? And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. If your choices were never really yours, then who or what is making them for you? You believe that time moves forward, that your life is progressing, that every moment is new. You assume that you are moving towards something unknown, something unexplored, a future that has never existed before. But what if you are not moving forward at all? What if you are trapped in a cycle, one that has repeated countless times before, and you simply cannot remember? You wake up every morning, live through the day, and go to sleep. You assume that tomorrow will be different, that you are making choices, shaping your future. But how do you know? What if you have already lived this exact life before? What if, at the moment of your death, your consciousness is reset, your memories erased, your experiences wiped clean, and you wake up again, believing that this is the first time? What if every mistake, every triumph, every heartbreak has already happened, again and again, but you simply cannot recall the previous cycles? Imagine that you are reading this sentence for the 100th time, but every previous version of you has been erased, leaving behind only the illusion that this is the first time. How would you ever know? If every past version of you has already disappeared, then how many times have you already done this? Have you ever had a strong feeling of déjà vu, an overwhelming certainty that you have already lived this moment before? You assume that déjà vu is just a glitch in the brain, a misfiring of neurons. But what if it is something deeper? What if déjà vu is not an error, but evidence that you have already experienced this moment in a past cycle, and your mind is simply leaking fragments of that hidden history into your present awareness? You assume that time is moving forward, but what if it is simply resetting itself? Imagine that at the moment of death, you do not vanish, you do not cease to exist, but instead you wake up again at the beginning of your life, with every previous cycle erased, every experience forgotten. You believe you are moving toward the future, but what if you are simply walking in circles, reliving the same events, trapped in a reality that never changes? If this cycle has reset before, then what is causing it? If reality is looping, if you are caught inside an endless cycle, then are you simply reliving the same sequence forever, powerless to change it? If the cycle is endless, then how many versions of you have already lived and died, each one thinking that it was the first, never realizing how many came before? If you have lived this life before, then is there a way to break free? Or are you simply a passenger moving through the same events over and over, powerless to change what has already happened infinite times before? If the cycle is endless, then here is the final, most unsettling question. How many times have you already been erased? And when this cycle ends, when your life resets once again, will you ever know? Or will you be lost, just another forgotten version, trapped in the loop forever? Look around you. Everything you see, the walls, the sky, the objects in your room, feels like it exists whether or not you are looking at it. You assume that reality is independent of your perception, that the world continues existing even when you aren't observing it. But how can you be sure? You have never experienced a moment outside of your own awareness. Every sight, every sound, every interaction has only ever existed within your perception. So what happens to the universe when you look away? Does it remain unchanged, or does it simply cease to exist until you return your attention to it? This is the observer's dilemma, the disturbing realization that you can never verify the existence of anything beyond your own consciousness. You assume the world is real because it appears to be, but appearances are just experiences inside your mind. Imagine you are in a room with a single door. The moment you step outside, the inside of the room disappears from your perception. You believe it still exists, but that belief is based on assumption, not evidence. Now expand that idea outward. Every place you have ever left, every moment, you have forgotten. What if they were never truly there in the first place? Consider the way a video game works. When you explore a digital world, the environment is not always present. It is rendered in real time, appearing as you move through it, while areas outside your vision do not exist until they are needed. What if reality behaves the same way? What if the world around you is only constructed when you turn your attention to it, and the moment you look away, it vanishes into nothingness? Now, take it even further. What if other people only exist when you are interacting with them? You assume that your friends, your family, the people in your city, all continue living their lives when you are not around. But how do you know? You have never experienced their existence except in the moments when you were present. What if they too are only rendered in the moments when you are observing them, vanishing the moment you leave? The unsettling truth is that your consciousness is the only thing you can be absolutely certain of. Everything else, every object, every event, every person, is something you perceive, but can never verify as real beyond your own experience of it. If perception is the only evidence for existence, then what happens when perception stops? When you close your eyes, does the world remain? Or does it dissolve into a void waiting to be filled the next time you open them? Now consider this. If reality only exists when observed, then what is its true form when no one is watching? You assume the world is consistent, that it has a fixed structure. But if perception is what brings it into being, then outside of perception, it has no definitive state. It is undefined, unformed, waiting to be shaped. If that is true, then what happens when no one is observing anything at all? What if, for a moment, every conscious being ceased to exist? Would reality continue? Or would it collapse, unable to exist without a mind to perceive it? And if reality depends on being observed, then who or what was observing before you were born? Who or what is ensuring that reality persists when you sleep? What if your consciousness is not just a consciousness, but the consciousness, the only thing keeping existence from dissolving into nothingness? And if that is true, then here is the final, most unsettling question. Are you experiencing reality, or are you creating it? And if you are the one generating reality, then when you finally disappear, will the universe disappear with you? Try to hold on to this moment. Right now, as you read these words, try to capture the exact present, the very instant in which you exist. But before you can grasp it, it's gone, already replaced by the next. No matter how hard you try, you can never truly be in the present, because the present is always disappearing before you can catch it. You assume you are living in now, but where exactly is now? The past is behind you, the future is ahead, but the moment you attempt to isolate the present, it dissolves. This is the vanishing present paradox, the realization that the very moment you experience is already slipping away, making you forever out of sync with reality. Now take it further. If the present is constantly vanishing before you can experience it, then when do you actually exist? If your consciousness is always lagging behind the present moment, then you are never truly here. You are always experiencing reality as it was, not as it is. By the time you register an event, it is already in the past. This means that your entire life is lived in delay, reacting to moments that are already gone, never actually inside the moment itself. But what if this goes even deeper? Imagine if time itself is not flowing forward, but is instead made up of static frames, still images, like a film strip, flashing one after another so quickly that they create the illusion of movement. Now, consider that your consciousness may work the same way. Each moment of your awareness may be a separate discrete snapshot, disconnected from the next. You assume that your mind is a continuous stream. But what if it is actually a series of still images, rapidly appearing and disappearing, giving you the illusion of time passing? If this is true, then your perception of the present is nothing more than a trick, a construct of the brain, piecing together individual frames of consciousness into what feels like a smooth, flowing reality. But if each moment is separate, then where are you in between them? If you exist only as brief flashes of awareness, then what happens in the gaps, the empty spaces between moments? Does your existence blink in and out of reality, vanishing between these intervals? Are you disappearing constantly without even realizing it? Now take it further. If the present moment is always disappearing, if your awareness is built on delayed perceptions and fragmented consciousness, then how can you ever be sure that your past moments were ever real? What if the only thing that exists is this exact moment, right now, and everything you remember, everything you think you have experienced, is just an illusion being created in this instant? What if every time your awareness shifts, the old version of you is erased, and the only reason you believe in continuity is because your mind fills in the blanks? If every moment is vanishing as soon as it arrives, then how can you ever be certain that you were here a second ago? And if you can't prove that you were here before this moment, then here is the final, most unsettling question. How do you know that this is not the first moment of your existence? And if it is, then what happens? When this moment vanishes, just like all the ones before it,